Robert, I had the opportunity to join you yesterday in your roundtable discussion at the City Summit, all around microgrids. Now, what was fascinating was microgrids mean many things to many people. How do you define microgrid?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Kevin. I would start with the context, actually, because if you look at the energy system today, it's still highly carbonized, and that's not making it very sustainable. And what we're trying to undertake now is to highly decarbonize it by bringing in renewables. And that means bringing in renewables typically to decentralize the energy system. And that implies, in a third step, also to make it more intelligent. So that's when we speak about digitalization, to manage all the complexity in the grid, the power flows, the fluctuations, both in generation and in loads. So putting all of that together, and then microgrid in that context is a way of achieving the need that people have for a reliable, a resilient, also an affordable, and at the end, a much more sustainable power supply. So that's the context view of it, right, in the big picture. And then if you ask me from a technological or technical perspective, typically a microgrid is something which includes renewable generation or hybrid generation, so a mix of renewable and conventional generation. Typically a storage facility, either battery or other ways of storing energy or power. Then typically, still in many cases, a power supply, so a grid connection itself. And then, of course, the intelligent piece that manages all of this in a way to optimize it. And there's different dimensions, right? As you said, there's different views on it. You can try to optimize your cost. You can try to optimize the sustainable, the CO2 footprint. You can manage and optimize in several dimensions.
And what was fascinating on the discussion yesterday in the roundtable was that there's no one size fits all. We heard of Kiel University, so a university microgrid, for want of a better word. Yeah. There was industrial use cases. Blue Lake Rancheria in the US, you had cities. So again, it's back to your point that it does many different things, and depending on what you're trying to do, the technology allows you to do that based on let's say the use case you're after.
Absolutely. And you know, all of them have a different purpose, but there's usually a common ground to it. And in all of these aspects, again, sustainability plays a much more important role. I think we're seeing it in many parts of our lives. If you look at what governments are undertaking, at least in many places of the world, to make energy systems, transport, everything more sustainable. So I think all of these use cases that we have seen have that sustainability aspect. And then a lot of them also that aspect of resilience of the energy system, of the power supply, particularly in these examples that relate to, you can call it remote locations or remote communities, where power supply sometimes really makes the difference between life and death, actually.
Yeah, true. And, you know, it was the Blue Lake Rancheria yesterday. They spoke about when they put that into that community, and then they had the awful wildfires and the power being cut off at the transmission lines because of the fire risk. Then the community started to see that, hey, I can go charge my electric vehicle, drive my electric vehicle back to my home, and with an inverter power my home. So it was kind of, I suppose, it's making it tangible benefits. That was one of the things that stood out for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely Blue Lake for me stands out. It's what you described. It's making it tangible. Often it's theory that we're talking, right? Also, we as technologists, it's theory, but there you see how it impacts the well-being of people, of real people. And Jana from Blue Lake, she also said that actually there were 4 lives that were saved during the wildfires because their hospital was actually powered with the life-saving equipment all the time, while in other places around that area, there was a loss of power because of these load shedding activities that the utilities had to do, which I think then how more tangible do you want to get, right, when it's between life and death?
Well, it played in, as you mentioned earlier, to the whole resiliency and the local resiliency, right? So it was the destiny was in their own hands, to be honest.
Absolutely. Okay. And one other example, which I really liked, was Upper Blinkwater, the project in South Africa. because it has all these aspects of kind of improving the quality of life of the people, of the community itself, by bringing electricity to the village, because this is an example where it's about off-grid, right? It's even one step further than Blue Lake. They didn't even have a grid connection, so they were living without electricity. So imagine what electricity means in our everyday life. Refrigerating, right? If you have your dairy products, meat, fish, whatever it is that you're consuming, which just needs power to do the refrigeration. The light for everybody to read, or the kids to learn at night. These are big things. Babak from the DLR told us how this also created jobs now, right? The village is now producing furniture, something which they hadn't envisaged before. So it's a big thing in terms of quality of life, of advancement of communities. And what I like so much about this example, in addition, is being an off-grid example. Imagine you would have had for one single village to put a whole line into that village, exactly the amount of money. And then again, thinking also about sustainability, the amount of resources, steel, copper, everything else you would need to put there, the transport, right? The CO2 footprint you would have just to create all of that. And no, instead you build up a power supply system, a microgrid based on renewable generation, and bring all of these good aspects to the community. I think that's fascinating.
No, agreed. I can hear one question. I'm a technology kind of guy. We've seen all the advancements in energy storage, whether it's lithium ion or battery or flow battery or whatever. We're seeing, more renewable technologies are coming online, better storage, but loads more software as well. Any technology standing out for you in terms of, kind of something that's helping unlock that whole microgrid concept?
Well, at the end, again, this is a lot of more complexity than having a central generation unit somewhere and then the loads at the other end of the line, right? So you have these fluctuating generations. Imagine, right, in a village that relies mainly on solar power, you have a cloud in front of the sun, a bit like here, like in our video now. You will see lights on and off because I'm sitting in front of a window and weather is changing today, right? So, but then you have a cloud passing over, and then suddenly there's no power supply. So you need to have the storage, and you need to have the right way of bringing the storage into the game. But then they also have, or might have, conventional generation as a backup, right? But then when to fire up the generation to make sure that you keep your battery also loaded to a certain degree, not get everything out, then how do you recharge it? Do you take the conventional generation? Do you take the PV, or do you, in cases where there's a grid connection, then take a cheap power because it's available at the moment from the grid, right? To just optimize all of it. And this is where software comes into the game, because it's difficult to impossible for us as humans to manage all of this 24/7 and to optimize all these different parameters. So this is where software comes in, and it can be actually pretty simple, right? We had one of our partners visiting our microgrid lab here in Erlangen, just close to where I live, and the big thing of simulating the loads, the generations, the storage, and so on. And then you have a little board there, a kind of a control cabinet in the corner of the room. You open it, and then there's one little controller where the software is running in the upper left corner, and that's it, right? And that's, I think, the power of what software helps, and also with the improvement of the computing power today that is available in the market, where you can go smaller and bring much more intelligence into much smaller space, and again also helps us to have a much more sustainable footprint in all the aspects.
Agreed. And what became known as the Internet of Things, it's it, right? Compute out of the grid edge, software, it almost being autonomous, and you set the parameters, the guidelines, and it goes off and does what it needs to do.
Yeah. And if you want to go one step further, of course, I think we also discussed it yesterday in our roundtable, is then how can these communities, or if it's a village, or if it's a city, or whatever it is, an island, then can actually participate in the energy market, right? And this is, again, where software comes in, because then it's about also how does the market evolve? How is the pricing today? When does it make sense to put in power back into the system or not? When does the system need power? And this is all going to be more and more controlled by technology, by software. And I think that's also then the big benefit of software. And I think there's shouldn't be any reason, hopefully, to be afraid of it. It just makes a lot of sense.
No, and in all of the projects that were called out yesterday, it was kind of afterwards when people saw it working, be it at the university, at the tribal nation, in South Africa, whatever. When people saw it in operation, okay, now I understand. Now it's my energy, it's ours, right, and it's helping us.
Yes, yeah, it's about us, exactly, about the people.
Now, obviously, we had the roundtable yesterday as part of the before the Web Summit and the City Summit. We had the Siemens Smart City chat. Anything else popped up in the roundtable, the Twitter chat that caught your eye?
Yeah, something very, very interesting. I think what you might overlook is the cultural aspect, right, and the emotions attached to it. And again, Babak from the DLR, who was helping and working on this project in South Africa, actually was picking on what we've discussed around all the time now, the microgrid, right, as a word, because he said, it's in his conversations, people then say microgrid or even nanogrid. What does that mean? Like, do I get an inferior service, right? I know my relatives in the city and they don't speak about micro or nano or whatever. I want the same service, the same quality that people have in the cities. So they call it community grids. And I think there was a very interesting, and again also kind of an emotional moment, because it shows, again, it's about us, it's about the people, it's not a technology, and microgrids is a technologically probably proper term, but then to make sure that you also move these things out of the way, because people should be embracing it, and not be kind of hesitant to embrace it because they say, well, it's maybe something inferior. At the end, they're convinced because they see it works and it makes their lives better. And it's at the exactly same quality as if you live in the city and are supplied by your city power supplier, right? There's then no difference. And I think that was a quite remarkable moment.
Yeah, no, that was
Yeah.
one of my takeaways, because of it. Yeah, I live in the world of technology. Oh, it's a microgrid, cool and whatever. And then you kind of go, yeah, well, I don't want something inferior. Why treat me differently? And it was just like,
yeah,
duh, hadn't never thought of that. So that was fascinating.
Same.
Hey, Robert, thank you very much. I wish you well.
Yeah, thanks. Same to you, Kevin. Great talking to you.